My name is Lena Marchetti. I am 33 years old. And the Tuesday afternoon my father called to tell me my brother had moved into my childhood bedroom was the afternoon I finally understood that being invisible is only a virtue until you decide to become visible. He said it the way people say things that do not feel to them, like things that need saying carefully. Your brother needs the space. We gave him your room. My mother was on the call too. I could hear her in the background before she picked up the extension. She said, "You have your own place. Stop being dramatic." I had not said anything yet that could be called dramatic. I had said, "You gave him my room." My father said, "It's our house, Lena." I said, "I know whose house it is." Then I said I would be stopping the monthly transfer. My father said, "You wouldn't dare." I said, "Watch." I hung up. I set my phone on my kitchen counter face down. I stood in my apartment in Providence with the afternoon light coming through the south window, and the only sound the refrigerator's low hum, and something moved through me that I will describe as a decision reaching its final form. Not new, not sudden, just complete. What my father did not know, when he said it was his house, was that the monthly transfer I had been sending for 5 years had been covering the largest single-line item keeping that house. The mortgage. Not all of the household expenses, not groceries, not utilities, though I had covered those too at various points, but the mortgage itself, $1,340 per month, transferred from my account to my parents' joint account on the first of every month for 61 consecutive months, without a single missed payment. I had set it up on autopay. I had never mentioned the autopay. My parents knew about the transfer. They did not know it was the payment that stood between them and a servicer notice. The transfer stopped on the 1st of the following month. On the 15th, the mortgage servicer sent a notice. By that point, my father had already called my employer. Let me tell you who Lena Marchetti was before that Tuesday, because the woman who said watch had been building toward that word for a long time. I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, the eldest of 3 children. My parents, Rosa and Dominic Marchetti, had both grown up in Providence. My father's family had been in the city for 3 generations. My mother's family had arrived from Sicily in the 1970s. My father had worked for 26 years as a finishing supervisor at a commercial printing company called Atlas Print Solutions, a job that had been stable until 2018 when Atlas was acquired and the finishing department was restructured, and my father, at 58, found himself with a severance package and a resume that had not needed updating in a decade. My mother had worked part-time as a dental hygienist until her wrists made the work impractical, and then had done bookkeeping for a family friend's construction business until that business closed. The house they lived in was a 3-bedroom colonial on Elmwood Avenue that they had bought in 1994 with a down payment assembled from both families. By the time my father lost his Atlas position, the mortgage had 17 years remaining and a monthly payment of $1,340. My father's severance had covered the first 8 months. His job search, which was earnest and consistent, and which produced nothing equivalent to what he had lost, covered nothing. My younger brother Marco was 29 at the time of the phone call. He had been living in Boston for 3 years, working for a tech startup that had reduced its headcount twice in 18 months and from which he had been laid off in the spring. He had come home to Providence in May. He was, by all accounts I received secondhand, doing fine, looking for work, present in the household, useful in the ways that a physically capable young man living at home can be useful. He was in the smaller of the 2 spare bedrooms when he arrived. The room my parents gave him in September was the larger one. My room. My younger sister Julia lived in Providence too, married, 2 children, house of her own in Cranston. She called me the day after my father's phone call. She had not known about the transfer. She had known, in a general way, that I helped my parents financially because I had mentioned it once and she had said that was kind of me, and the subject had closed. She had not known the amount or the consistency, or the fact that the transfer had been running every month since I was 28 years old, 3 months after my father told me, on a Sunday in October 5 years earlier, that he wasn't sure how they were going to make November. I want to tell you about that Sunday in October because it is where the transfer begins, and because understanding how it began is part of understanding why it had to end. I had driven up from Providence. I was living in Cranston at the time, 20 minutes away, in a one-bedroom I shared with a roommate named Fiona Reyes who worked in hospital administration for Sunday dinner, the way I did most Sundays. My father had been quiet through dinner in the particular way he was quiet when something was pressing on him that he had not decided how to address. After dinner, when my mother was in the kitchen and Julia and Marco had gone to watch television, my father had stayed at the table and said, without looking at me directly, "I don't know how we're going to make November." I had asked him what he meant. He had told me about the mortgage, about the severance timeline, about the job search. He had not asked me for anything. He had simply told me, the way people sometimes tell things to the person they trust to receive them without making them smaller or larger than they are. I had asked him the payment amount. He had told me. I had said, "I'll cover November. We'll figure out December." He had looked at me then. His expression had something in it that I recognized as relief and something else that I did not try to name, a quality that had to do with the weight of being the one who needed help from his child and the particular effort required to receive it without it becoming a different kind of conversation. I had covered November and December and every month after that because the job search continued producing interviews that did not convert, and the household had organized itself around the assumption that the transfer would continue, and I had never contradicted that assumption. I want to be precise about what I had been covering because the precision matters. The mortgage was $1,340 per month, as I said. Beyond that, I had covered at various points and in various amounts the following: a furnace replacement in January of the second year for $1,200, which I paid directly to the HVAC contractor rather than transferring the amount. My mother's dental insurance premium after the family friend's construction business closed and her coverage lapsed, $187 per month, which I added to the monthly transfer without announcement. A roof repair in the third year, $3,100 partial. The other portion was covered by a homeowner's insurance claim that my father had managed himself. I had also once transferred an additional $800 when my father mentioned that the property tax bill had come in higher than budgeted. The total, across 5 years, was approximately $97,400. I had a spreadsheet. I had not shown it to anyone. What I had not done in those 5 years was use my childhood bedroom. I had moved out of the house at 22 for college and had never moved back. The bedroom had remained mine in the family's understanding. My things were in the closet, a shelf of books I had left there, a mirror I had never gotten around to taking. When I visited for Sunday dinners, I did not sleep in it. It was simply there, as rooms in childhood homes remain present even when you are not. My father had given it to Marco, without telling me in advance, without asking, without, apparently, considering that there was anything to ask about. This is the piece I want you to understand clearly. It was not the room. I did not want to live in that room. I was 33 years old, and I had my own apartment and my own life, and I had not slept in that room in 11 years. It was that the room was the measure. It told me what I was worth in the accounting my family had been running, which was useful, present, reliable, and not worth a phone call before a decision was made about something that had my name on it. Not the house. My room. I worked as a project coordinator at a civil engineering firm called Harmon and Vance in downtown Providence. I had been there for 7 years. My manager, a senior project engineer named Robert Esposito, had told me at my last review that I was the person on the team he would trust with any client, any deadline, any document that needed to be exactly right. I coordinated permitting timelines, contractor schedules, municipal approval processes, the work that keeps infrastructure projects moving through the institutional machinery that would otherwise stop them. I was good at it. It paid $79,300 per year. I had a separate savings account I had been building for 3 years that had $31,400 in it, which was the account I had been mentally earmarking for the down payment on an apartment of my own. When I stopped the transfer on the 1st of October, I did not tell my parents I was stopping it. I had told my father I would stop it on the Tuesday call. That was sufficient notice, in my assessment. He had said I wouldn't dare. The stopping itself was the rest of the sentence. The mortgage servicer's notice went to the house address on the 15th, as servicer notices do when a payment is missed. It was a standard first notice letter. The October payment had not been received. The account was in arrears, and the servicer requested contact within 15 days to arrange payment or discuss options. Standard language. The kind of letter that, if you have never missed a mortgage payment, is extremely alarming. My father called my cell phone 4 times on the 15th. I was in a client meeting at Harman & Vance from 9 until 11:30 and missed the first 2. I returned the third call at noon from my desk. The mortgage payment, my father said. Yes, I said. Lena, the notice. I know about the notice, I said. I stopped the transfer. A silence. You said you would, but I didn't think. I know you didn't think I would, I said. Another silence, longer. Your mother is very upset. I said nothing to that. How are we supposed to make the payment? That's a question I'd like us to work through together, I said. The way we should have been working through it for 5 years. He said nothing. I've been covering the mortgage since November of 2019, I said. 61 payments. Plus the furnace, plus the roof partial, plus the insurance premium, plus the property tax shortfall. I have a spreadsheet. Total is approximately $97,400. I paused. I'm not telling you that to make you feel a particular way about it. I'm telling you because I think the conversation we need to have should start from accurate information. My father said nothing for a long time. Then he said quietly, I didn't know the total. I know, I said. That's part of what I want to talk about. He asked if he could call me back that evening. I said yes. I said I would be home after 7. What happened between noon and 7 o'clock on that Thursday, I know only in fragments, because I was at work and my father was in Providence and the fragments reached me through separate channels. My sister Julia called me at 2:15. She had gotten a call from my mother. She said our mother was, she paused, choosing the word, not well, not physically. She was sitting at the kitchen table and not speaking. My father had told her the total. I asked Julia what she had said to our mother. Julia said she had told her to drink some water and that she would call me. I said that was the right call. Julia asked, Did you really cover all of it? Yes, I said. For 5 years. Yes. A pause. Lena. She said my name the way people say a name, when what they mean is something larger than a name can hold. I know, I said. Does Marco know? Not yet, I said. Not from me. Julia said she thought Marco should know. I agreed. I said I would leave that to my parents to decide how to handle, and if they didn't handle it I would tell him directly, but I wanted to give them the first opportunity. She said that was fair. My father called me at 7:15. He had spoken with Marco in the afternoon. He told me this without elaborating on what Marco had said, which told me that Marco had said something my father was still processing. We talked for 51 minutes. It was the longest phone call my father and I had had in my adult life. He did not apologize for the bedroom in the first 30 minutes. He asked questions about the transfer, about when I had set it up, about the furnace, about the insurance premium, and I answered them factually from the spreadsheet I had open on my laptop. He did not argue with any of the numbers. He had always been a man who respected a complete record. In the 35th minute he said, I should have called you before we gave Marco the room. I said, yes. Your mother, and I didn't think. I know you didn't think, I said. That's the thing I need you to understand. Not that you made a wrong decision. That you didn't think to make it with me. He was quiet. I've been part of this household for 5 years in a real way, I said. Not in the way that shows up at dinner. In the way that keeps the lights on. I needed that to be something you knew. He said, I knew you helped. You knew I transferred money, I said. You didn't know what the money was doing. There's a difference. Another long silence. What do you need from us, Lena? I had thought about this. I had thought about it for the 3 weeks between the Tuesday call and this conversation, during commutes and lunch breaks, and 2 sleepless hours at 4 in the morning when the question had arranged itself into something I could answer with precision. I said, I need the mortgage conversation to become a real one. With all the information. With Marco in it because he's living in that house and he's 31 years old, and he can contribute something. With Julia's input because she's been outside this and she has perspective. And with me at the table, not as the person who covers the gap, but as someone whose situation is considered when decisions are made. My father said he would make that happen. I said I would hold the transfer through November to give the conversation time to take place. He said that was more than fair. I reinstated the transfer in December at a reduced amount, $780 per month, which covered half the mortgage payment. Marco, through a conversation I was not present for but was informed of afterward by Julia, set up his own transfer for the other half. He had gotten a contract position in Providence by November and had income. He had not known until my father told him that the mortgage had been covered by his sister for 5 years while he was in Boston. Julia told me that when Marco found out, he had put his hands flat on the kitchen table and looked at them for a long time without speaking. I know what that silence was. I do not need it narrated. The room, my childhood bedroom, was still Marco's. I had not asked for it back. My father offered, twice, to have Marco move to the smaller room. I said no both times. The room was not the point, and it never had been. The point was what the room had been used to measure. The conversation about the house, the real one, with all 4 of us and both parents at the kitchen table, with a spreadsheet printed and distributed, with Robert Esposito's name nowhere near it because it was a family matter and not a professional one, happened on a Sunday in November. It lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. My mother said, at some point in the second hour, that she had not understood what I had been doing because I had never told them.
I said that was right.
She said she wished I had told them. I said I understood that. I also said that the telling should not have been necessary for the consideration. She looked at me for a moment. Her hands were on the table. Then she said, "You're right." 2 words. She said them quietly and without elaboration, and they were enough. In February, I made an offer on a 1-bedroom condominium in the Fox Point neighborhood of Providence, 4 blocks from the waterfront. My down payment was $31,400 from the savings account I had been building for 3 years and had not touched once, not even for the furnace, not even for the roof. Those had come from income because I had needed the savings account to remain intact for exactly this purpose. My mortgage broker was a composed and efficient woman named Sandra Ferraro, who told me my file was among the cleanest she had seen from a first-time buyer and that we could close in 30 days. We closed in 28. I moved in on a Saturday in March. My father helped me move boxes. He did not say much, but he carried the heavier ones without being asked, and when we were done he stood in the middle of my empty living room and looked around and said, "Good bones." He meant the apartment. I think he also meant something else. The thing that has settled in me in the months since that October phone call is this. The people who forget to see you are not always the people who mean to overlook you. Sometimes they forget because you made it so easy not to look, because you handled things quietly and showed up reliably and never made your presence into a demand. Stopping is not punishment. It is the moment you require them to look. If you are watching this, there was a moment in this story, a Sunday in November, a kitchen table in Providence, a printed spreadsheet in front of 6 people, my mother's hands flat on the table, when she said 2 words that took 5 years to arrive. Was there a moment in your own life when someone finally saw what you had been doing, not because you performed it but because you stopped? Tell me in the comments. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who has been paying without being seen. Like and subscribe if you're new here. I make these stories for the people who recognize that table. Take care of yourselves.